Welcome back to Making Sense. The program is designed to offer an analysis of news. In this week's edition, we are going to talk about the LGBT plus community on the occasion of the Month of Love.
Actually, we have updated about the progress of the legislation about the LGBT laws in Thailand. So actually we have 4 or 5 laws in the line. At first, we have the Gender Equality Act, which has been in effect since 6 years ago. It must be, actually, it is supposed to be revised again this year, but because of the COVID-19, it's still there. And the next law is the Civil Partnership Bill. Actually, last year, we were very excited because the cabinet approved the bill and it went to the House. However, it has found stagnant.
And the reason that have been updated from the Justice Ministry, the government that asked the team to revise the partnership bill again, just for 3 reasons. Firstly, is about the religious sensitivity, which is there are some certain things about cultural appropriations and cultural sensitivity that might be the conflict to the bill or the act. The second, the authentic needs of the stakeholders. And the first and the third one is about the necessity that whether we should have this bill or not, that the government will ask the team of Justice Ministry to revise.
Actually, there is another bill on the same-sex marriage. How different are they?
The difference between the Partnership Act or Partnership Bill and the same-sex marriage bill, the first one, which is the Partnership Act, is a separate law exclusively for the homosexual couples, while the same-sex marriage bill, which is they aim to fix or revise the Civil and Commercial Code 1448, which is to make it more inclusive, which allow every gender in the society can get married or can get committed by the law, under the law, and grant the protection to their relationship.
As far as we've known, Move Forward Party MP Thanyawat Kamamungwat has pushed it, and it's already been on the House agenda since November. However, because of many reasons or other laws urgency, it is still there. It has been postponed for deliberation later. However, we also have problems with the other bills.
Yeah. Well, the new, I think it might be the newest bill that had submitted, but it actually is not submitted and has been raised by many groups. If I'm not mistaken, it is more than 2 bills about this, which is about the gender marker bills. Well, there's one bill that's already submitted to the lawmaker already to write the law, which is called the Gender Recognition Bill. And there's another bill that has the same name, which is drafted by the civil. It is also from the NGOs, a group of NGOs, to grant the gender markers to the trans people, which is they share the same characteristic. But there are some certain issues that happen. Maybe Mr. Tanna can talk about it a little bit.
If passed into law, those who seek title change must have undergone gender reassignment surgery. And according to Kun Shompunut Nakonsak, the chair of the working group on the gender recognition draft bill for the Ministry of Social Development and Human Security, she thinks that surgery shouldn't be the case, but because it's your body, right? But the problem is that there are many regulations. So for the government-sponsored draft bill on gender recognition, trans must undergo surgery. But for the draft proposed by a civil society organization, it doesn't impose such requirement.
Why?
Because I think they think that one sense of gender identity doesn't have to align with your body. Yes.
But what about the reason of the requirement for the surgery?
I think they think that trans should have the surgery in order to prove that they are, I mean they are real trans. And if there might be some concern about some people who seek title change just to abdicate responsibilities. For example, men at the age of 21 must have the sort of military conscription, and there is some concern that some will just seek title change just to abdicate this responsibility. But there might be some other concern as well, right?
Yeah, there's another concern that has been proposed by the team who drafted this bill, that they want the clarification on the gender identity that they are real trans people in order to prevent these people from escaping the prosecution for the crimes. But the thing is, if you look at the bill closely, I would like to make an argument. The first is not every transgender in the society who can afford to go through the transition, because transition process itself is very expensive. It may cost like 100,000 baht per. I think it's the cheapest price that it could be. The second one, even though the government try to sponsor the trans people to get the surgery in order to get their gender marker changed, the thing is, the government overlook the gender diversity, they overlook the spectrum of the diversity of the transgender people, because it's not every transgender want to go through this transition period. Maybe there's many trans people, they prefer their own genitals. And thirdly, even though they have already sex change, it doesn't mean that they can afford the hormone support as well through the entire life, because the hormone support is supposed to do since when the surgery has done. So, and also if the government try to use the argument, or the state try to use argument that every transgender must go through the transition period in order to clarify their identity, in order to prevent them from escaping from conscription, or maybe prevent them from the prosecution for the crimes. It does well. From this argument, I think it is quite unsound, because it is a government role in order to be updated on the people profile since the beginning. And also, we have the technology on our ID card, which is biometrics. We can sneaking from changing our gender marker, but we cannot change our genetic identities at the beginning. So it means that even by doing so, it means that the government tried to put whole responsibility in preventing the crimes to the people, which is actually the role of government itself is supposed to be providing national security to the people.
Actually, before the surgery, there are steps to do, right? And so many things. It's complicated.
Yes.
How and why?
According to the data collected by the Tangerine Clinic, I mean it is the first trans clinic in Thailand, only 20% of trans undergo genital surgery. And the reason is because the whole process is very expensive. I mean, while some state hospitals charge around 60 or 70,000 baht and put them on a waiting list, private hospitals charge around 200,000 baht. And this is not, in addition, not to mention other feminization and other reoperation surgery. And many trans have to pay for this service themselves.
And it's also about the definition of their gender, right? How will they define whether this person this person's gender should be changed?
Well, in order to, the decision to change the gender, it depends on the individual itself, because when they reach a certain stage, maybe they can find themselves at, I'm not a man anymore, I'm a woman. So at a certain age, they can go through the surgery, but mostly they will try to seek their transition around 18 age plus up, because I think because it is much safer range of age to endure the pain during transition, because the transition itself is a painful process. It is not in by one day sometimes. It is maybe in maybe several days. And also it's not mentioned about taking the hormonal since the beginning, even before the transition process as well. It's kind of the transgender people has endured much pain from society itself, and also from the body itself. Maybe in my personal point of view, I think that this is the last stage that they want to endure. They don't want to endure about the social justice anymore. They don't want to endure any pain experience anymore. This is the last stage they don't want to tolerate. I think the law should be, there must be the protection on them, and the law must be just. Do not be exclusivity,
Some people thought doctors' evaluation.
Yes, you must consult the doctor. You must be diagnosed first, and then in order to seek the operation, you must get approval from the doctor.
What would the doctors see? They check the hormone, right? And also psychological
tests.
Tests, right?
And also, I feel like there's many transgender. There's many consequences of the surgery. Maybe there's sometimes, even though according to my interview with many transgender people, they say that sometimes they use their muscles or they use skins from their legs to make the new vagina inside them, which is they say that even though it's risky, but sometimes it's worth. Then sometimes they use the large intestine inside to make the new vagina, which is really much riskier to their life. Because sometimes there's some feces leaking into the vagina and cause infection. They cost their life, and I feel that there is a thing that the government should concern about their well-being as well. And also the bill itself, if you look at the gender recognition bill proposed by Ms. Chompono, Kun Chompono, they overlook the group of non-binary people and intersex people as well. Well, intersex people is mean that the one who was born with ambiguous or maybe with two genitals, which naturally the doctor will assign their gender since they was born. Okay, for example, you give birth to one child, and then you found out that this guy or this person has two genitals. The doctor will diagnose that whether this person should be girl or boy. By measuring, sometimes they measure from the hormones, the testosterone or estrogen. If which one is higher, they will assign the gender for them. For example, if the testosterone higher, they will tie up the vagina and then they just let the penis itself. But the thing is, when they grow up, sometimes they feel like, oh, I'm not a boy, I'm a girl. But the thing is, I cannot use my vagina anymore. I don't have weight in my vagina, and the ticking box of the gender marker, there are only two things, which is Mr. and Mrs. or Miss. It will cause them feel difficult for them that whether should I choose, because it is my body, and I feel like I'm a girl, I'm not a boy anymore. So which one should I choose? So they have to choose, according to the law, they have to choose Mr. But the thing is, that person is not a girl. Their gender identity is feminine already. And also another group is non-binary people. The non-binary itself, they avoid the gender binary. They do not consider themselves as a man or a woman. They just avoid it.
But right now, the Constitution says either a man or a woman.
That is a problem because according to Section 27 in the Constitution of Thailand, they say that every man are protected under the law equally. The man and woman is a problematic because the man and woman itself is meaning that essential man and essential women that they measure the manliness and womanliness, the femaleness from the genitals, which is really unfair and unjust to many people in the society who are being overlooked, which is the group of LGBT people. We can see that the Constitution itself is really essentialist by nature. So, in order to solve every problem in society about the gender, about the law about gender, we should revise or maybe change the Constitution to be some more inclusive. Because, in my opinion, if we can change this, it doesn't only benefit the group of LGBT people, it also benefits the group of heterosexual people as well, because they can choose to do whatever they want.
But right now, go back to the Gender Equality Act. It's been in effect for 6 years, and what's it for?
It just prevents the sort of the gender discrimination. And if you witness, those who can file complaints must be the affected persons. So the problem is that some human rights advocates argue that it should be broadened. Any witness of the gender discrimination can file complaints with the committee.
Because some people who were threatened might be too afraid to go and file the case by themselves.
Yes, and they are calling for just making an amendment to the Gender Equality Act, which is supposed to take place now.
But
it's delayed.
Yeah.
Yes, delayed
because of the COVID-19, right? Another point that the legislators are discussing, because all of the bills on the table might be related to the civil and commercial code, and there are many sections involved. Could you please give some examples?
The civil partnership bill, you are referring to the call for an amendment to civil and commercial code proposed by Move Forward Party MP Thanawan. He just wants to make an amendment to the marriage section in order to make it more inclusive. By when you make an amendment to the law, anybody of any sex can be legally vetted. So it's going to be more inclusive, and everybody is under the same law.
Because right now it's not like the marriage between a man and a woman.
Yes.
The civil partnership that we talked about can give them some rights,
yes.
but there are some differences, some other rights that they will miss.
Tax exemption for opposite sex couple and benefit of the state employees. They are not entitled to, civil partners are not entitled to this kind of benefit enjoyed by heterosexual couples.
That's an example, isn't it?
Yes. And last month, a trans woman teacher, she lost her husband because he died of terminal stage cancer, and because their same-sex union is not legalized, so she's not entitled to welfare state enjoyed by heterosexual civil servants. So that is one example.
Otherwise, they would have had more chances and access to the drugs.
Yes, but the problem is that I'm not sure whether if the civil partnership bill, is passed into law, this case will be entitled to the same right. We have to wait and see.
You mean retroactively?
Yes. Or in the future. Yes.
However, let's go to talk about what are we hoping for finally for the development of the LGBT legislation in Thailand?
In
What
my opinion,
really- yeah.
through equality. I mean, because just for example, if we focus on the civil partnership view, I think this is not true equality because civil partner, I mean, inferior to marriage or heterosexual couples because they just coin a new term, and they have another set of regulation or laws to be enforced on this group, and even if the Ministry of Justice joined the forum at FCCT last year, and the official said that the civil partnership bill, she's aiming for marriage equality, but the problem is that the ministries was facing a lot of opposition from some religious group and the lack of the statistic of the LGBT population to prove to what extent this law is necessary.
But then, in this sense, actually the society should have had their say and support for the information, right? And last year, from the political rallies last year, we have seen the LGBT groups joining the rallies, hoping for changes in Thailand. But right now, it's quiet again. What are they doing actually? Or is it for them or for whom to take action?
I think the problem is that right now the COVID-19 pandemic is returning again, but I have heard that some of them are looking forward to the new round of protests, right?
And just the protest, will it make the real change to society?
In my opinion, the process is from a democratic movement that those who are minorities, those who are suppressed, can voice out their voice to the authorities above. But the thing is, in order to solve the discrimination problem itself, we need a structural change, which is, well, as you can see, even look at the two bills closely. For example, partnership bill by the Gender Recognition Act and also the Gender Equality Act as well. Well, there's a law, but the thing is, the society now ingrained or inscribed with a thing called structural discrimination, that we are unconsciously looking down or unconsciously discriminating those who are different from us, which is in this case, which is LGBT people. Well, in order to solve the discrimination itself, as I told you before, we have to educate people. That we have to make them see the importance of the human rights. We have to educate the people to have respect toward the diversity in terms of gender, regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, or any differences that is socially constructed. And also we need to educate them in order to make them not only aware of the differences, but we need to make them educated to have what we call the human rights consciousness, which is make them know what they should behave, not make unconsciously, that we should respect other people, we should not discriminate other people, we should not look down on other people. And also, I want to mention that even though the government or maybe the many organizations that try to push forward the bill, but the thing is, we have to concern about the rights to self-determination, which has been inscribed. That have been talking in the UN Charter since the beginning. That everyone has the right to see the meanings of their life by themselves, without any interference or without any subjugations. So it should be better for the government or any organization who try to push forward the law or push forward the bill to consider this point, because it is one of the things which is really the most important to the human life.
I agree that the whole society must go together and make it in real life, not just in the law.
just to add, Kun Parame, the root cause of gender discrimination, I think, is public attitude toward the LGBT plus community. Based the study by the UNDP, it found that the general population has, a sort of favorable attitude toward the LGBT plus population. But the problem is that it's still far from inclusion. And so in my opinion, the public should be comfortable with the notion that our identity is fluid and changing. It's quite flexible. So don't try to put people into a box. And right now there are just in our law there are 2 boxes, male or female. We should destroy all the boxes.
Well, because I think the society should know that gender is not what you are, but is what you do. Gender is performative. It depends on you perform. And we should know that the gender is socially constructed, that we should not take it for granted because gender itself is really fluid.
So let's hope and see the progress of the whole Thai society for the real gender equality.